Roberto Monaco here with Influenceology and the Chiro Advocate, and today I am super excited to introduce my brother, my friend, Dr. Brian Capra. What's happening, bud?
Hey, brother. Not much, man. I'm excited for this.
We're going to have a good time.
We've been talking about this, and finally it is here.
So I love it. I love it. Dr. Brian Capra is the founder of Genesis Software, and I know this guy for, I would say, around 4 years now. He's an amazing dude. We hang out often. I wish we hang out more, but we have a chance to connect a lot. And the other day, he was talking about his new project, about what he's been working on and helping chiropractors. And he mentioned a couple words that really grabbed my attention. He said, and the words were patient experience. I'm like, patient experience. So what is that? And then he went to all this rhetoric about patient experience. I'm like, you know what? We got to do an interview, because if you're a chiropractor, you're going to be blown away with the information the guys, Dr. Brian Capra, has to offer you. But before we get into it, I want to ask Dr. Brian Capra, why have you launched or opened up Genesis Software? Can you give us some background? Why you start your business? And
yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It's good you asked that, because patient experience, I mean, we've been in business for almost just about 10 years. Actually, today is our 10-year.
No way!
Yeah.
Today?
That's a genuine response right there. He didn't know that, yeah.
That is cool. That is cool. I really didn't know that.
You did not know? Cinco de Mayo. Eh?
Cinco de Mayo, 10-year Genesis Software. I love that. I didn't know that.
Just side note, May 7th is my birthday, my 40th birthday, so I can easily keep track of both.
Nice.
All right, so so this patient experience is an evolution of, not that I'm an evolutionist, but it's where we've evolved into with Genesis. It's how we got to where we are today. So it's been on my mind for 10 years though, and the reason I say that is because when I started in practice, I got out of school and I went and worked with some really high volume doctors, 1,000 a week kind of practices, and was learning all kinds of amazing skills and how to convert patients and all this stuff. And then I went and opened my own practice, and one day, typical patient comes in. His name was Chris. Low back pain, your traditional low back. So we go to the exam. He's on 12 Advil every day, just to get through, because he works. He has kids, so he's got to keep going. So he's taking 12 Advil a day, which is it's pretty much liver failure, death. You're risking stroke, and he has no idea. So anyway, he's to the point where he got so used to that, he's like, I have to go do something. So even 12 Advil wasn't enough. Anyway, so he gets under care, and sure enough, first re-exam, all the pain's gone. He stopped taking the Advil. Typical experience where the patient's like, what? I forgot I even had the pain. They have all this pain and then it's gone. They forgot about it. So one day, Chris comes in, gets his kids under care and all that. One day, Chris comes in and he says, can I speak to you privately? We go into a room and he says, hey, I thought I should just tell you this. I didn't know where else to turn, but I'm thinking about killing myself. And the number one thing, I know you've heard my story before, so I don't want to, so the one thing you're supposed to ask somebody when they tell you that they're going to do this is you're supposed to ask how they're going to do it. So I asked him, it's like, because you want to know how serious they are. So I said, Chris, how are you going to do this? And he said, well, in my shed, in my backyard, there's my guns. It's where I keep them. Once the kids are asleep and my wife's asleep, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kill myself. So I knew he was serious, and my first thought was find out what's changed in this guy's life. He's been on a patient for a month, right? So, or it was like maybe 2 months. But I said, what happened, Chris? What's changed in your life? Why? I'm new in practice too, so this is overwhelming. And he said, well, I said, are you doing drugs? Because my first thought was this guy must have started to take drugs. He said, no, I stopped taking all the drugs. I said, well, you stopped taking all of what drugs? And he said, well, I was smoking marijuana. Every day when I came home, I was drinking a 6-pack of beer. I was doing all this stuff. And he said, I stopped doing all that, stopped taking the recreational drugs, started eating better, started exercising, stopped smoking. So I said, you just started here. It was like a month or two. I said, you just started here and you did all of that. since you started here? And he said, yeah. And I was like, wow. I'm like, any one of those things to do, you've dealt with people with Tony Robbins and addictions and all that. It's like, you don't just stop that stuff. You got to have a really big reason. So anyway, I said, well, what, first of all, your body is used to a total onslaught of chemicals, and now you've removed all of it at the same time. I'm not surprised your body is coming to a homeostasis or trying to regulate, and you may not feel great while you detox. So that's number one. We'll get you some help. I said, but why did you do this? Which it's always more important why they do things. So he said, because when I came to, we called it the doctor's report. When I came to the doctor's report, which is our initial workshop, I learned that this wasn't about just my low back. This was about my potential, my health potential, what I can be. And then he said, and I have my kids. I thought this is affecting how I was interacting with my kids. I already knew I wasn't present for my kids. I already knew I wasn't being a father, but it really hit home, and I knew I wasn't being present with them or my wife, obviously. And he said, then he would see how they were interacting, how their grades were suffering, and how their schoolwork was suffering, and how their interactions with other children kind of mimicked the way he was with them, which was short and abrupt and mean, and because he was drugged up all the time. So he's like, I realized that I couldn't be the father I wanted to be, or the husband I wanted to be. So he got a really big reason. So, in chiropractic, you hear people talk, the leaders in our profession talk all the time about how chiropractic, instilling the philosophy of chiropractic in a patient is more important than even any adjustment.
Yep.
Because that changes their whole paradigm and how they think, more so than the one adjustment, which obviously could be a miracle too. But if I have an option, I would choose to change somebody's mind rather than give them an adjustment. That's just if I had to choose. So anyway, so what I'm saying is we talk about how chiropractic, the philosophy or the adjustment or whatever, can literally change history, right? Because it's changing generations effect. It's a ripple effect throughout generations when somebody gets it, which is just exactly what's happening with Chris. So I'm dragging on the story here. But one day I wake up and I felt like somebody literally punched me in the stomach. I've had other patients where you think about them. When you're out shopping, you're at the gym, you remember, I haven't seen so-and-so. But with him, I knew as soon as I woke up one morning, and I still get the feeling every day.
It's gut.
I get it every day, and I'm like, I knew he was gone already. And I went to the office, and I found out that he had actually committed suicide. And the first thing I wanted to do was go and find out when's the last time I saw him. So I went into his chart, and I saw the last time we saw him. And not only did I see that, but I saw a whole bunch of other reasons why he was telling us. He actually physically told me, but there was a whole bunch of warning signs before that. Between no-shows and no future appointments, and his care plan was a mess, and his financials were a mess, and everything was a mess. So it's almost as if we did everything possible to create the non-optimal patient experience in my office, right? To make him feel like as if he wasn't cared for, as if he wasn't the most important thing in the world. And that's how people should feel, because the opportunity is ours to change their life, to give them something we've been entrusted with, to give them an amazing blessing we've learned. It's a gift that we learn this new paradigm on how to approach everything, but definitely health. And we treat it with disrespect a lot of times by not realizing that every instance, every interaction you have with a patient is an opportunity to give them the principle. Because Chris got it the first visit, right? But not everybody gets it like that. Sometimes it takes weeks, years, months, whatever. It takes longer for some people, and we don't know when that's going to be. And then we can't assume that they're going to remember it forever, because if Chris remembered it forever, he would still be here. To carry on the story a little bit, what happened was, just so happened I met some gentlemen that were building software for billing, insurance billing of all things, nothing to do with chiropractic or saving lives or any of this stuff, but it was about insurance billing, and it had a different methodology. I've told you, we've had kind of conversations about this forever about it, but it's a different workflow methodology.
It's really important for our viewers to understand, though.
Okay. So, yeah, tell me, cut me short. Okay, so the difference really is, I'll try to summarize it in a minute here. In billing, when you're doing insurance billing in your office or you're outsourcing it, you don't want to have to go to lots of different aging reports to find the claims that you have to follow up on, let alone your staff having to go to do that work. First of all, it's a waste of time for them to go find claims when technology today can find the claims for you. The second problem with that is if you're the manager of the practice, which you're the manager of a business, and you're the adjusting doc, you're the conductor of the orchestra, and you're the violin player at the same time. You're trying to wear too many hats. So you don't have a lot of time to verify that people are doing the work they're supposed to be doing. So you need some of it to be automated for you at least. So when the system finds work for you, you have one number at all times of how much work is supposed to happen and is it completed without having to go to tons of reports.
That was what didn't happen with Chris.
It did not happen. Well, right. So that was what we learned with insurance billing. And so when I saw that, I implemented that in my office for my insurance billing. My collections doubled. But what I wanted to know is how can we use that to address patient experience, what we now know as patient experience. At the time, it was just patient retention, and then it would evolve to patient relationship, and now we know it as patient experience management, where we're actually quantifying, where we're using technology to, in an automated way, find the things that when the patient is subconsciously or unconsciously or not verbally telling us that they're about to leave, but they're doing things that are showing us that they're about to leave. And we need to create something in the system that the system actually finds those risk items and creates a task and quantifies that work for us in an automated way, so that we know when a patient like Chris is a risk to leave our practice, which is any patient. You want to know. It's not like Chris was more important. Everybody should be treated the same way, right? Because for example, when they have a no-show, patients don't go to miss a chemotherapy visit.
They don't.
And then they call themselves to reschedule that thing, right? So when a patient misses your visit, doctors, and they don't call you, they don't get it. They don't get that was an important visit. Otherwise, they would have called you, right? So we have to treat that for what it is. That patient either never got it or has forgotten why they were there to begin with, right there in that moment. And if you're like me, I believe that's a life or death situation. So it has to be treated like that. Problem is, with other technology, it's buried in some report that hopefully your staff can keep up with at the end of the day, and you really don't have a way to, in real time, verify that work's happening. Right? So that's why we started Genesis. When I learned that about billing, and I had this experience, my own patient experience, and I saw how the technology would have totally saved not just Chris's, but it could save lives like Chris on a scalable level, right? Because we do insurance billing for 500 plus practices. We do something like 300 or 400,000 claims every single month, and I could do 4 million claims a month because the business is scalable. Because so much automation involved, and we have unlimited people to follow up on the claims. But so the thing is, we have to build a technology or a methodology, which we call this a workflow methodology. This patient experience workflow methodology, where the system does a lot of the identifying of the risk items for you and delegates it to people for you. If we really want to build a scalable practice and a scalable profession to see the number of people we really need to see to change healthcare, we have to have something like this. You cannot do it with what's out there on the market other than Genesis right now. I mean, I believe that wholeheartedly. I'm not trying to push my product here, but I just know it. I've seen it.
I believe that too. I believe that too. So now you mentioned about patient experience, and kind of like we all understand, or we think we understand what patient experience is, but can you tell us in your perspective, because you deal and you help doctors for 10 years now, what is patient experience in your opinion, and give us some examples so we can have a reference point?
Yeah, let's actually talk a little bit about something we're all familiar with, which is customer experience, right? Okay. What a lot of people don't realize today is the biggest, most successful company, the Apples, the Amazons, the Zappos, all these companies that are really famous right now, the number one thing they focus and invest their money in is the patient. I'm sorry, not the patient, the customer experience. So I'll give you 2 quick examples.
Okay.
By the way, here's a quote too. Customer service shouldn't just be a department; it should be the entire company.
Love that.
Tony, I think you say it's Shea. Tony Shea is the CEO of Zappos.
Okay.
All right. So Apple, there's 2 different companies that I like to talk about because it gives you a little bit of contrast of different ways to approach the customer experience. Apple is world renowned for an experience. You don't just buy the phone. I mean, it feels good when you buy the phone. And there's research that shows that 70% of buying experiences are based on how the customer feels they are being treated throughout the process and how they feel about the purchase itself.
Yep.
Right. So when it comes to Apple, Steve Jobs was renowned for this story where the first MacBook that opened up the laptop, when it first opened up, when you open one now, I have one over here. I don't want to. When you're looking at it, you see the Apple right side up, right? And why is that? Right? Because when I'm looking at it, it should be facing me. It's my laptop, but it's not. It's upside down when I look at it. But when it faces you, it's right side up. Right? So the reason for that is because when somebody's using it, and everybody's going to be seeing somebody use it, who do we want the experience to focus on? The potential customer. In that case, the guy already bought the thing, so he doesn't need to see it, right? So, I mean, literally the first time the first one came out and it was upside down, Steve Jobs fired the guy on the spot that designed it that way because it's about the experience. I mean, he was obsessive about this. And another experience I had is I actually met one of the top sales reps in one of the stores, in one of the biggest Apple stores in the world. Just met by chance. It's like randomly at a seminar, actually at CalJam.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm out there and I asked him. So tell me about how do you guys sales? What's your sales process like? How do you train? And he told me all their training procedures and how they train together and how they're not bonused with money, they're bonused with points. And the way they get bonused is if they actually, by the way they mentor other people to become great customer service or customer experience reps. And not only that, but how do they give you an experience that you don't even realize is happening? So, for example, he was telling me that when you walk into the store, they are trained to see where they're trained to read your body language. The moment you walk in the door, they're already looking at you. And they know if you're looking at a product and you're facing it as opposed to, and you know when somebody's off in the distance here, right? So if you're facing it as opposed to turned at this many degrees, as opposed to turned at 90 degrees compared to the product and looking over at the product, they're trained to know what that means and when to approach you, what to say, just based on that alone. They're also trained, for example, when you ask a question, or you're making a statement, you're asking a question, they're actually trained to rub their chin while you're talking. And why is that? The point is, why do you think that is, Roberto? How does this make you feel? When you're asking me a question, how does this make you feel?
That's called, for body language, called the thinker pose. That means that you're concerned about me and you're, instead of like vomit, I call vomit information, you're thinking about what's important to me so you can give the customized information for me.
Right. I want to... Exactly. So this is stuff that you've learned.
Yeah.
Is that neuro-linguistic programming?
Yeah, NLP. Yeah, NLP. Yeah.
NLP.
Yeah.
So, but they use this at Apple.
I love it.
Right? So how cool is that?
Really cool.
And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is helping you feel good about your purchase and the entire experience. So here's another reason why they do this, because it's when you look at it, the Apple, the iPhone now, and you look at the other competitors out there, the Androids, there's almost the same features now. There's a few different things. So they can't compete against everybody based on the features alone. It has to be about the experience you get when you buy the product. This thing, like, I can't wait to open up the new box, and I can't wait to see how it's going to look and how it's going to feel and how sleek it is and what they changed on it. I love walking in that store. The people I've always thought how awesome they are. I just don't want to go and buy an Android at the Verizon store. It's a totally different experience. I'd rather pay way more for this thing. I'm getting the watch. I have a watch.
Are you getting the new watch?
Yeah, I spent $1,000.
Come on.
It's on back order for 4 weeks.
Oh man.
4 weeks. I can't wait to get it. I have a watch that works. It doesn't need to be charged. That one, the battery's gonna die on it. I'm still buying it. So my point is, Apple. It's all about how you feel, and we know that how you feel is a big determining factor in how, whether or not you're going to purchase.
So how do you translate that into so like the doctor's like, okay, man, let's talk about Apple, but I have a practice here. I'm seeing 200 a week, 500 a week, 1,000 a week. I want to go to the next level. How do I translate that into patient experience?
Okay. Should I go into the Ritz or leave?
No, I'd love to. Let's talk. Okay. Let's talk about Ritz. Let's talk about Ritz. Yeah.
Apple is cool as an example, but it's really much more about a communication experience, feeling type of thing than it is about a business process type of thing.
Okay.
One of the best business process things I've ever learned is it's called the Ritz-Carlton experience.
Okay.
So you can actually go and go through their whole thing. But just as an example. Most people don't realize that Ritz-Carlton is obsessive about knowing every step and every process that has to happen to give you an amazing experience. Why? Because they charge $1,000 a night for a room, right? There's four walls and a bed and a shower. It's the same features as every other hotel room, but your experience is way different. And just for example, how do they create that experience? That when you drive up there, they already know your plate. They already know your name. When you get out of the car, they're already calling you by your name.
Yep.
They know if you eat there, they know your preferences, what you like to drink, ice, no ice, how you like your meat cooked. They know all this stuff because they keep track of it. When you go into their hotel room, their room itself, every housekeeper has a checklist for everything they have to do to make sure they never miss a step, all the way down to the little chocolates on your pillow. But for example, the bed, I think, takes something like 37 steps to make the bed at a Ritz-Carlton room.
Pretty crazy.
Which is crazy that it takes that many steps. It's also crazy that they know that, and that everybody knows it, and that it happens perfectly every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So why I'm telling you about the Ritz-Carlton experience is because, it's a more of a process-oriented thing. Apple was more of a feeling type of thing. And what's good about Ritz-Carlton is, what type of business are they? They're the type of business that charges a premium, and they are dependent on repeat customers.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So we're going to go into this in a second. You said, how do we translate this, or what are some, talk about some mistakes that doctors make when it comes to the experience. The best businesses in the world are all about creating an amazing experience in the beginning and throughout.
Okay.
So the first number one mistake I see happening in chiropractic is it's very, very focused on the front end, myself included. I did this for
You're talking about, so the number one mistake, so doctors get it, the whole idea about creating this patient experience to wow their patients from A to Z. So the number one mistake they do is that they focus on the front end, not in the back end. Is that correct?
Yeah. So they focus on the A and very little on the Z.
Give me the example then. How specifically? Give an example of that.
Well, generally, what I'm talking about is just look at all the coaching groups out there.
Okay.
Some are better than others. I don't want to even get into that right now on this call.
Okay.
Bias the audience here. But this is for good reason. We have to fill our practice up, and if you don't have the patient experience in mind, or you never thought about it, or don't know, it's hard to understand this. This is major, big business type of stuff that is not taught to us in any form at all as chiropractors, right? So anyway, you'll see a lot of the coaching groups focus on how many new patients, how many new ones, how many new ones, how many new ones, how many new ones.
Yep.
And I see very little data coming out of those coaching groups as to what their attrition or retention rates, depending on how you look at it, what those retention rates are, and what are the biggest reasons why patients leave their offices, and how they measure those things, and how they track those things. And there's very little data put out by those groups showing you the biggest reasons you're going to lose patients.
Okay.
And here's the thing. When you look at statistics, so I have one here, some statistics here. It costs 6 to 7 times. There's a few different ones. it costs 6 to 7 times more to acquire new customers or patients than to retain an existing one. A 2% increase in customer retention has the same effect as decreasing costs by 10%. A 5% reduction in customer defection rate can increase profits by 5 to 95%. And that's the key, because in some practices, their retention is so low that their repeat purchase is what really is happening there, is so low that if they just do a few things to start focusing on the experience and improve the retention, because what happens when you get retention of a patient? All right, retention means they buy more. Okay, they're getting more. They're around more, like they're around for a longer amount of time.
Referrals,
right? So they get the philosophy, but they have the opportunity. So from a principled philosophical standpoint, it's your obligation to do this.
Yep.
They have the opportunity to learn something that will change their lives and have a ripple effect throughout history. They're more likely to get good results with their care, and their health optimizes to higher and higher levels over time. And since they're there for longer, they understand it better, they're able to communicate it better, and they're getting better results. What do?
Refer. Bring the family.
Refer.
Yep.
That's how you go from 5 to 95% difference, by just changing retention by a small amount. So when you talk about the front end, and you talk about, there's amazing conversion processes out there for how to take a patient in 2 days from, being committed to drugs for the rest of their life to totally letting go. Like my patient Chris is a good example. As hard as that story is for me to think about every single day, the guy totally changed his life in 1 day because the process was so good. And for a long time I thought that was me. I thought that I did a great job, but long term I realized that that wasn't my patient. That was somebody's son. I screwed up their entire life. So the process on the upfront side is important, but when you lose a patient like that, you start to think about the long-term effects throughout history of not addressing what you could have done a better job at right there. So the number one thing is it's very front-end loaded. So and we don't look at it from the perspective of the patient experience is a life cycle. It's a continuum. It doesn't end, right? So even if they leave your practice, there's still something to do. There's still a follow-up, a reactivation, and some docs are not so big on reactivations for a lot of reasons. But at least you should be trying to find out why they left. From the
in your experience of other chiropractors, I know it's hard maybe to say a statistic or find a number, but out of 100 chiropractors offices that patients leave, how many actually have any data or any system or any patient experience procedure to figure out why someone left?
I would say almost none have a procedure for it. I will tell you that technology today has forced them to start to think about it, because I have a patient, Dr. Paris, right?
Okay.
In Maryland. I don't think he doesn't mind me sharing the story. So he didn't realize that he had 2 separate systems for billing and for practice management, and he always had this reconciliation with the patient's balance problem.
Okay.
So patients would come in, his staff would be scared to death about that they were going to be asked what their balance was. So they're putting that energy out there. So if they're scared to death to get one question asked, what do they do about every interaction? They avoid every interaction with they never look anybody in the eye. They're just scared to get this one question, right?
Yep.
So, and when they do get it, because they know when they get the question, they're not going to get the answer. And when you look at customer service, 70% of the time people leave because they didn't get their problem resolved quickly, right? So when you can't get them the answer instantly, they are already not trusting. So meanwhile, this goes on and on and on. And Brian doesn't realize it, but all of a sudden Yelp happens, right? And all of a sudden he starts seeing reviews of patients that were no longer patients saying, like the doc, but they were never my finances. They can never explain to me why what my balance was, and that doesn't feel good. Some people thought it was shady, right? And this Brian's a great guy. He would never cheat anybody, but it's how they felt that matters.
That's the message. Yep.
And when they have that energy, they're going to leave, and they're not even necessarily thinking I'm going to leave. They just stop coming in, and they forget why they stopped. You know, they're gone. All right, so that's an example where they don't measure it, but it's really happening. They're not going to tell. In most cases, they do not tell you that they're going to leave. They show you. They don't show up for visits. They don't, you know, all these things.
So what's the second mistake that you've seen chiropractors make when they're trying to create this patient experience or prevent them from doing it?
So really the second thing is to look at it as a continuum, and really the mistake is to not have a sound, basic business, tactical, fundamental tactics. All right, meaning that there's three things you have to do to manage a business, to manage a process. And if we're talking about the patient experience, which we are, there's three things that have to happen to manage any. It doesn't matter if it's a billing process.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. You know, but just incidentally, on the billing process, the way we improve it is we look at the claims that didn't get paid over and over in detail to figure out why they don't get paid, so we can build a better process. It's any business should be doing that. So when you look at the process that is going on, there's three things that should be in any business process, and that is you have to quantify the work that has to happen. So in a patient life cycle, there's a number of visits. So the new patient visit has a whole number of things that have to happen, right? They have to verify insurance, create the care plan, check the patient in, charge them, schedule their second visit, create the schedule them for the workshop, invite the spouse. There's all these things.
Okay.
Right? Those are all tasks that if the Ritz-Carlton were here, they would tell you that should be a checklist in everybody's pocket, right? The biggest business in the world, if they were looking at your business as a business, that's how they would tell you to manage this, and not a piece of paper necessarily. And with technology, you can't leave that stuff up to paper anymore. Okay. You need to know if one of those things doesn't happen, you're risking the patient experience, you're risking the attrition. Okay. It could cost you 95 times more than it should to run your business, right? So the first thing is to quantify the work, and not just for the new patient process. It doesn't stop when they sign up. It doesn't stop the day after they sign up. It happens every single visit. There has to be things that happen. For example, an insurance claim has to go out. Sometimes a secondary has to be sent out. The note has to be documented. Everything has to happen perfectly, and it has to happen in real time. All right. So the daily visits, the re-exams, the recurring exams, dates leading up to re-exams, things should be happening in your process. Communication should be happening, Apple-type communication. We're seeking out objections, right? We're talking about long-term goals. So you're talking about quantifying the work, every step all the way up to re-sign. And then if they don't re-sign, now they have left. Now you're going to start your quality assurance. Now, quality assurance should happen whether or not they leave. Don't get me wrong. You should be soliciting feedback throughout the patient life cycle. But certainly when they leave, you're going to want to find out whether it's a phone call or an exit interview or whatever. You want to ask every single person that you know is going to leave or has left your office why they left. And you're going to put it like this. You're not going to say, hey, why did you leave? You're going to be like, listen, I'm really sorry that we weren't able to serve you better. Can you help me understand? I'm not asking you to be a patient, but can you help me understand why it is that you no longer want to be here so that I don't make the same mistake with somebody else? This is really important. I feel like we need to help more people. Who the heck? Okay, so you're not going to get most people to even get on that call or respond to a survey. But if you just got 5% of the patients you lost over time responding to those things, think about the impact that can have on your business.
Huge.
5% reduction in customer defection rate can increase your profits by 5 to 95%.
If all they get from this call is this and implement, man, that's gold. That's gold.
Okay. So quantify every single thing that has to happen with, I would suggest, obviously, that you get Genesis, because our system actually automates all these tasks going to your team. You get to customize the stuff in the task.
And I remember, like I saw you speak in a seminar, and you're talking about the steps between. I'm trying to remember between a brand new patient all the way to a wellness.
First re-exam, I think it was.
Yeah,
right?
and was
36 visits. It was something like, without even going into depth.
Yeah, I think it was like 240 something, or something insane.
Just the tasks alone.
Yep.
And we weren't talking about like your internal marketing events, your external marketing events, and all the tasks that go into those. We're just talking about the patient interaction steps.
So after you quantify, then what?
You got to delegate them. Okay. Everybody has to know who's responsible for what, and there can be no ambiguity. Okay, so there's no, well, I thought Mary was going to do that. You know, there's no any of that. It's somebody's responsibility, and if it's not one person's responsibility, it's the team's responsibility, like maybe a team of 2 or whatever. And if they don't, this way, if either of them don't get it done, they both suffer the consequence the same way. Okay, we don't want to manage with pain and negativity. We want to manage with giving people bonuses and reaching thresholds and objectives, but it has to be extremely clear. Now, with the technology, again, the tasks, Roberto, automatically get delegated for you to specific people.
Quantify, delegate, and?
Verify. Verify that it was completed. This is probably the biggest, most misstep when it comes to the 3 most, we talked about the 3 components of management.
Yep.
It's especially in chiropractic offices. Why? Because, like we talked about earlier, you're the business owner, but you're also the doctor.
You're wearing too many hats.
Owner and an employee. You're the conductor and the violin player. You're the coach and the quarterback. It's almost impossible to do those things effectively. Not because you don't know what should happen at any given moment. It's that you don't have enough time to verify that it happens on a consistent basis and do the work. So you have to adjust. You have to document. You have to bill. You have to. And then you have a family a lot of times. You have at least some kind of life outside of your practice.
Some kind of a life.
I just got back from coaching baseball right before the interview. So, I mean, there's always something.
Yep. Yep.
And you want to enjoy that. You don't want to be thinking about your business when you're not there. And if you're constantly memory managing how you lost a patient, like I was doing with Chris, like I thought about it if that's the way you find out you lost patients, you're going to lose your mind over time. It's not scalable. One of the things you should think about when you're building a business is a business should be something that you could sell. And the only reason something is sellable is if you can pull yourself out and plug somebody in and nothing changes. Okay? If it's totally dependent on you memory managing every single patient, that's not a real business. It's a good thing, don't get me wrong, you're probably doing a lot of good, but it's not technically a business. Okay, so it was basically, we said number 1, most businesses, practices are front-end loaded. Then we need to quantify the overall patient life cycle, right? Then we talked about quantifying every single step, including how to solicit feedback. Including, I would suggest, I love Fred DiDomenico's communication stuff.
Love Fred.
Elite coaching, man. He's taught me so much with just a lot of that body language stuff, and it's legit stuff. I mean, people will really tell you what they're thinking just by their body language. I think they say 95% or more of communication is nonverbal. It's something crazy, and then you start to learn it. Like, wow, it's so obvious, right? Anyway, so I would suggest on that. So quantify every step, delegate the work, and verify that it's completed. And the way we do that with technology is the system. When a task is created, there's automatically somebody that is also assigned. There's an owner and the requester, which is their supervisor. So they have to get approval that a task was completed. So everybody should know not only what work they're responsible for, but who are they responsible to go show that work to that it was completed.
Because if the idea linking back to the patient experience, if you don't quantify, if you miss one step, patient experience up or down. If someone, if you don't delegate a task to someone, or you delegate to 2 people and they think, oh, you're gonna take care of it, or I am, and nobody does. Patient experience up or down. And obviously, if you don't have any accountability program in place, then obviously patient experience is going to go down, for sure.
Yeah, and delegation, by the way, it's another little sticky spot that I see a lot of doctors, chiropractors, man, and I was one of them. Okay. It's so common where like you talk to them, well, the doctor's like, look, I don't do that. Like they've got this air about them, like they've arrived because they no longer do stuff. Right? But they also don't verify that somebody else is doing it. Right? So they just kind of like, I hired a biller, I'm done. Right, so that's not delegation and it's not verification. Hiring somebody does not mean you've delegated anything. Right, it doesn't just because you hire somebody and give them a responsibility. Unless you're verifying that they're actually doing it, you never really delegated it because there's no accountability. Right, so a lot of time I think the word's abdicate. You're just like shoveling stuff off on somebody and hoping it gets done. But the quality of which that happened, there's no quality involved in that whatsoever.
And what's the last mistake you've seen Chiros do when it comes to implementing or having an amazing patient experience program in place?
Well, I think we spoke a lot about the things, but I would say kind of what I was talking about with Fred's stuff is there's a lot of information. There's a ton of information about customer experience. Some of the statistics I had for you guys tonight. It takes 12 positive experiences to make up for 1 unresolved negative experience. That's awesome. What is it? But when you start reading this stuff, you're like, oh my God, I'm not even looking at my experience. So I would say the number 3 thing combined would be that learn the body language communication skills as much as possible. And actually, Roberto, you'd probably be a great resource to list off some resources to go read up on some NLP and understand what it.
Yeah, if there's a book, I read like probably 30 books on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I had this couple levels. I got the second level, master practitioner of NLP. You know, one of the best books in NLP is NLP for Dummies. You know, the Dummy series.
Oh, really?
And you know, if you're out there and you want to learn, if you want to have your first book, after I read like 20, 30 books on NLP, because I read everything, and that book was like, I love the Dummy series, man. Don't like much the title. The book was awesome, so just get it. I think it's phenomenal. Now, if people are, by the way, I know you have a bonus. What's the bonus? By the way, we're going to have some extra stuff for you guys from Dr. Brian Capra. What is the bonus that we're going to be talking? Can you just give a little plug about what we're going to be covering in the bonus?
Yeah, well, as you know, we started with billing, right?
Okay.
So building a scalable billing operation, right?
Yeah.
300,000 claims a month going on. We're exploding right now, as you know. So
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's 1 million by the end of the year. It's so how do you build an operation like that? The first thing you have to do is understand the game you're in and who you're playing against and what the rules are. So the game we are actually in, this is a little teaser for it, is what most people don't realize is that insurance companies, when we're talking about just the insurance side of a practice.
Okay.
We can talk about cash too in a second. But on the insurance side of things, insurance companies, where do you think they make their money? How do you think they make their money, Roberto?
Not paying you.
Yes. Well, that's good. It's kind of that. Yeah. So a lot of people, I'll get a couple of answers. One is by collecting premiums.
Okay.
And especially now because the premiums keep going up like 50% a year. So they collect all that money and then they don't pay you, right? Mm-hmm. But one thing people don't realize is that it's not just not paying you, it's the interest that they collect on your money when they don't pay you.
And cash, how about, and I'm sure if it delayed 30, 60, 90 days, whatever, I'm not an insurance expert, but the more delayed, they play with your money cash flow, you know?
Yes, so absolutely. So they not only they gain interest, so 50% of their profit is made on that interest. So understand that that's called the float, the interest on your money. And when I say your money, I'm talking docs. That should be money in your pocket. It sits in their bank account. It collects interest, and then they factor that money, right? And then they reinvest that money, right? So once you get that, then you look at what are the tactics that they use to make a delay of even a day, right? Even a day. So that means delaying you from even getting the claim to them, let alone to them and then denied or delayed payment. So what we started to do is look at the entire billing operation and how we can streamline it to like where we have it today. But and we came up with 10 tactics that insurance companies use to keep your money, gain interest on it, and use it to audit other chiropractors. So
that, and I'm sure you're going to, if you put your name here and email for free, sign up at Chiro Advocate. Dr. Brian Capra is going to give. You wrote a book about it. Is that correct?
It's more of like a white paper ebook.
Love that.
It's not that long. Actually, we're converting it into video, so by the time you watch this, you might see the video.
Love that. So just put your email and and name here for free, so you can get that in your hands today. It's cool. So now, if I'm a doctor, I'm listening to you right now, and I say, man, I like Dr. Brian Capra. I like this idea of workflow. I like the idea about having a system working for me, to quantify, delegate, and verify my activities, so I can create the ultimate patient experience. How do I work with you? What's the steps?
What's the steps?
Yeah.
Good question. So normally when you're buying software, you're looking at a demo, right?
Yep.
But what do we talk about just now? We talked about an experience, right?
Yep.
So I could show you features, and you're going to look at the features of our software, and there's some cooler features than other softwares, like the cloud-based and all this stuff. Maybe you find a feature that's not in our software. But it's more about what we do and what it represents than what – it's more about the experience, really, right? So, when Steve Jobs was introducing the iPod for the first time, he said it's more about what this represents than what it actually is. It's because he knew the iPod – he already had the prototypes for the phone and the iPad. So what this is going to be is totally different. So he's already what he was saying. So what we say at Genesis is that what workflow represents for your business is way more important than what we are, which is a software and billing service, right? Workflow represents a whole new world of possibilities to create an amazing patient experience. And we could check off features on demos, and we do that as part of the process. But one of the most important things we do differently is we actually analyze your practice compared to our standards. In other words, we're a cloud-based system. We're obsessive about measuring every step in the process, just like we would hope you would be about your patients. And we have now proven the results that we get with practices with a system that does not have workflow and a system that does have workflow. So 32% higher patient retention, 26% higher compliance, over 60% higher collection per visit, and that's cash or insurance.
That's fantastic. Right? That's fantastic.
So retention and cash collection per visit, right? You don't have to be an insurance practice. As a matter of fact, we have the largest, I think, cash practice in the world. Dr. Zeno is client. There's no insurance. So anyway, what we do is we do an analysis, and we ask you a whole bunch of metrics and key performance indicators about your practice, and we can actually compare where your practice is right now compared to what our standards are, what you could expect by switching to Genesis.
So for example, if I'm a doctor, I'm listening to you, and I am okay with my software, but I'm not wowed by. I call you up, and then you're gonna benchmark my results with your current results that I should be getting based on my numbers right now.
Yeah, compared to our network of doctors actually using our software, we actually know what our numbers are. And because we're in the cloud, and because we treat it as a process, that an experience just like you should be doing for your patients. So we mirror, and we actually use our own software to manage our customer experience, meaning we use our own scheduler, our own documentation, our own billing. We use the same software that I challenge you to find another software company that uses their own software to run their company.
I love that. I love that. That's congruence at the highest level right there. I love that.
Absolutely.
So do you charge? How do you to take me through this benchmark comparison? Do you charge for? Is free, or what's the process? How do I contact you to do that?
So you actually get on the phone as opposed to other companies with either what we call a practice success coach for that. So a lot of times the first call might be with a representative where we just make sure we're on the same page that this is our process, so we don't waste each other's time. But ultimately you get on the phone with a practice success coach, and these are people that coach practices literally a lot of the things we spoke about today on how to implement that. You're not going to do that all in one day. And we're not going to sell you software, a bunch of money up front, and then you're done. And you get just a small piece of that, and what we do is we help you implement that throughout your life cycle, your experience as a client of ours. We know it doesn't stop on the front end, right? Just like patient's experience doesn't stop on the front end. We get it. We did it. I did it. So it doesn't work. And we want to keep you retained, and we want to keep you buying and referring and getting great results and referring other people. It's a business principle.
Yep.
So We don't charge for it. You do that analysis with a coach, and that is actually used as a tool if you become a client to implement our methodology in your practice over time to get those retention, revenue, and compliance results over time. And no, we don't charge for it.
Perfect. So how do they get this consultation? What's the best number, email?
It's real simple. You just go to genesischiropracticsoftware.com.
Okay.
And you'll see request a consultation. Just click on it, fill in your information, say you heard about us through Influencology or Roberto Monaco or whatever the options are there, and that'll be it.
What's the website again? One more time.
genesischiropracticsoftware.com.
Awesome. Dr. Brian, thanks so much, bud. Appreciate your friendship, or leadership, and your desire to help chiropractors create an amazing patient experience. What he hasn't told you yet is that he's so committed to have you create patient experience within your practice, and he doesn't want you to go and have quote unquote crises in your practice. And he's so committed to that when he told me, man, I almost cry, that he was so impacted by the story of losing a patient that he named his son. You have a son, Chris, So every single day, this gentleman here is reminded of an event that happened, so that won't happen again, and became his mission now. So I think it's really powerful, bud. Really powerful.
Thank you.
Cool. Again, make sure you reach out to Dr. Brian Capra, and if you want to get the ebook white paper on the secrets about insurance, just put your name and information. And thanks so much for being here, bud, today. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
Cool.
Appreciate it.